All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and I'm coming with my Washington Commanders 2023 training camp breakdown for day 6. Today was a very eventful day, easily the most fun day so far out of training camp. I mean, we're only 6 days in, but this was the first day with full pads, and fans were there as well. So this was the most hype day. We got the most clips. We got to see people like really playing. We finally actually ran the ball in practice. We haven't really been running the ball in practice because they've been trying to learn Eric Bieniemy's offense, the passing game side of it. It's a little bit more difficult to learn and fully understand, and like to the point that it's second nature, the passing game versus the run game. Run game, you can kind of install that a little later. You'll figure it out type of thing. So today was the first time we got run game. We got balanced offense, passing and running, so the defense had to adjust to that. They didn't know every play they're gonna obviously pass the ball, so we can adjust to that. They actually had to be a little bit more honest and play balance. It was just beautiful. Today was a more realistic outlook on how good the players are heading into the preseason. Well, most importantly as well, before we get to the preseason, that joint practice against the Ravens, and then of course the regular season week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. I feel like a lot of the news and details, who looked good, who didn't look good today, I feel like this is a more realistic grasp of who's actually real or not, who's underrated, who's overrated, and things like that. Now, it's still early. We're still only 6 days into training camp. We're just now reaching August 1st. So we don't want to jump to conclusions too much, good or bad, with a lot of these players. But hey, man, there was a lot of interesting news coming out today. And also, of course, with every breakdown that I do for training camp, you already know by now, I'm going position group by position group. We're starting with a few details. Then we get to the coaching staff. We do an injury update. Then we go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, all the way down to the DBs and even special teams. We have some special teams updates as well. Who's competing at punt return and who's competing at kick return, because those are two different groups right now. So we're gonna have to go through every position group, and again, I'm giving it to you straight, man, good or bad. I'm letting you know everything, because if a receiver has a great route and makes a great play, who did he do it against? And so I'm gonna let you know, oh, this DB got beat. Or if a DB locks up a receiver, I'm gonna tell you which receiver got locked up. So again, typically, if the offense is looking good, that means the defense did something wrong. If the defense is looking good, the offense did something wrong. So there's two sides of the same coin. Again, the good and the bad for every position group. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button, so you get notification each and every time I release these informative and opinionated videos, these training camp breakdowns, daily updates. I'm uploading the clips for y'all to see it yourself. And then I'm also breaking down the training camp clips and practices, all of the notes and everything like that. So make sure y'all stay tuned for all of the daily updates for everything training camp. And then, of course, also make sure you stay tuned for all the rookie film sessions I'm working on, any random breaking news for the Commanders, any random clips from like an NFL analyst, national media type of person talking about the Commanders in a great light and things. All of these random things concerning the Commanders. This is a one-stop shop. And without further ado, let's get it.
You tell your family you can be a commander.
All right, so today the fans are back, and this is the first practice in full pads, man. I'm so excited. I believe they're going to take Thursday off as well when it comes to practicing with full pads, but I think they practice with full pads today isn't Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, but not Thursday. Just to go ahead and let you know that. And then, of course, the fans can be there the 2nd, the 3rd, and then fans are not allowed again until the 8th, when it's Washington Salute Military Appreciation Day. Just to go ahead and give you that heads up as well. Also, John Com said that the weather is in the low 70s or something like that, and that's crazy because we're still in the 90s down here. I was looking like at y'all weather, even New York was like in the 90s for a few days, and then all of y'all just went right back to being decent, nice weather, and then we still in the 90s down here, firmly in the 90s. So I am a little jealous. And then moving on as well, of course, there was a huge crowd at the practice today. Shouts out to everybody that's been going. I hope I can catch one. I really wish I could, but man, shouts out to everybody that's been going, especially the people that's been going more than once. We really appreciate y'all. The players appreciate it, the coaches, the front office, Josh Harrison, all of the guys. They love the fact that y'all there. I mean, the stands are full. There's literally not even enough seats for everybody. And I mean, these are the most available seats that the Commanders, the Washington football team, the Redskins have probably ever had for a training camp, and y'all are still packing it out to the point that there's not not even enough seats for that. So that's absolutely beautiful. I really appreciate y'all for going out there and doing that. And then starting with the coaches, well, you already know we got to start with some Eric Bieniemy stuff, because Ron Rivera just kind of be chilling. He's kind of like a manager that goes around and monitors every little situation, whether it be like something in the offense, something on the defense, some special teams. But he now completely has just delegated all offensive responsibilities to Eric Bieniemy. That's why he's the assistant head coach. And then Jack Del Rio has already been running the defense. Now Ron Rivera will have random input here and there, but for the most part, Ron Rivera is just chilling and kind of like is the guy that you talk to in a press conference after practice to see what's going on with everything, the entire team and things like that. But in general, Ron Rivera is chilling this year compared to most years. I think even like time management wise, Eric Bieniemy is probably going to take over that, because even Andy Reid said that Eric Bieniemy helped them a lot with that and pretty much ran like the controlled the timeouts, ran the 2-minute offense and things like that. So I think Ron Rivera is really just like seriously just literally only a head coach. He's the motivator, and that's pretty much it. The guy that organizes everything and keeps everything together. He's the glue, but at the very least, he's not the one controlling the defense or the offense. I think that's a good thing for him and us. But again, after going on a little tangent, Eric Bieniemy, we got to start with him. And of course, first padded practice, you knew he was going to be one of the loudest people out there. I mean, after losing Chris Harris, our DB's coach, to another team, we already knew that Eric Bieniemy was probably our best candidate for being the loudest person on the field. And it seems like that's continuing every day. And why would he not be one of the loudest, if not the loudest, on the day that we have full pads? Like, this is the time to be as energetic as possible with the fans in the stands, feeling everything. It's like a different energy. And then there's pads. So practice even sounds different, like the clanking of the pads and the helmets and things like that. I know it sounded beautiful out there, man. And then also, man, he was not playing with the offense specifically. Like, one time they had to redo the huddle, and it was the first red zone rep. Like, they just started red zone, first rep, and he made them redo the huddle. He was yelling all kinds of F-bombs, said set the F in tone and stuff like that. If you wanted to see that clip, here you go, actually right here.
Go! Tiger! 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 Tiger!
Did Pringle just fall coming out of the hole?
And he wasn't done just on that play, man. I mean, there were a lot of times guys were lined up wrong or whatever may happen, and he was just screaming at them, again dropping F-bombs left and right, not playing with them. Like, we expect perfection over here, and that's one huge piece that Eric Bieniemy is contributing to this team, that it's a different level of expectations here. We're not accepting greatness. We're not accepting, all right, at least you tried. No, we're expecting perfection, and that's a beautiful thing, man. Eric Bieniemy, if anything, is going to make this team way better than it was last year. We could talk about Sam Howell being the quarterback. We could talk about our draft picks. We could talk about free agency signings. But at the end of the day, Eric Bieniemy is probably going to make the biggest difference out of anybody. You give the team from last year to Eric Bieniemy, and we probably win more than just going 8-1. It's just that he makes that big of a difference by himself, not only just on the offensive side of the ball, but just on overall team spirit and motivation, and just, again, the expectation of perfection. Also, he got really creative with the offense today, man. I wish I was there to see it in person, because they were running a lot of different personnel groupings. They were subbing people in and out. They were running all kinds of weird, creative stuff with the offense. They had a lot of motions. They had a lot of stacks where a lot of the receivers were like bundled up near each other and stuff like that, and trying to give the defense different looks to see, okay, we're going to do this chess move. How are you going to counter it? Things like that. Then they also did the Kansas City goal line play, the classic one that everybody loved from the Kansas City Chiefs last year and things like that. And then also the defense made an emphasis on to work on tackling today. Shouts out to Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera for that. Of course, with it being the first padded practice, you can kind of expect that. But also what I really loved today, first of all, 9-on-9s was an interesting thing. You used to only hearing or seeing 7-on-7s, 11s-on-11s in practice, but they were doing 9-on-9s today. But the reason that I loved what we did today in practice, a lot of one-on-ones. You're on an island. Receiver versus DB, figure it out. Offensive lineman versus defensive lineman, figure it out. Pure mano-a-mano, 1 versus 1. All practice, pretty much. I mean, if it weren't the receivers and DBs, it was the defensive lineman versus the offensive lineman. It was pretty much a steady run of like one-on-ones for a lot of the practice, and hey, man, they did not disappoint. We're going to get to that, though. Injury updates, none. That's a great thing. I hope that every time I do these training camp breakdowns on a daily basis, we can just skip injury. So, hey, man, I'm happy that we were able to do that today. Again, because Nick Gates, he was hobbled, I think, on Friday, but it sounds like it's nothing that mattered. He's still out there as your starting center as of for now, unless Ricky Strongberg is able to be good enough to surpass him. But it's not going to be anything injury related, at least something from whatever happened from Friday. And then, I mean, anything else, I mean, I haven't heard anything from anywhere else. Again, this is as healthy as an NFL team can be at this point in a season. I mean, it's literally like the best you can expect, best case scenario type of stuff. Now, moving on to the quarterback. Well, what was interesting today as well is that they ran a lot of starters versus backup. So the starting offense went against the backup defense. The starting defense went against the backup offense. And I like that because you get a chance to see, okay, backup defense, what can you do against these starting offense guys? Like, are you ready? Because, I mean, if you're going to make the 53-man roster, we're expecting you to contribute against other team starters. It's not like, oh, man, we had an injury to this position group, so now the opposing team in a regular season game has to bring out their backups to match our backups that are out there due to an injury. No, you're going to be out there against starters week in, week out, so you need to be able to hang with the starters. So I understand that. Same thing with the backup offense. Are y'all ready to deal with a starting defense if anything goes wrong? Now, granted, our defense is a little bit different than a normal defense. This is going to be a top 5 defense in the NFL, and I think arguably the best defense in the NFL, especially with a very improved secondary and a healthy and better nuanced, more counters, hand technique Chase Young. Hey, man, this defense, the sky's the limit. But I really like the fact that the offense is working against the backup defense, and mostly just because the backup defense got a good chance to see where they hang with the offense. But also, it allows Sam Howell to kind of process stuff a little bit because the D-line has been whooping up on the O-line so far in training camp, as expected. I mean, if anybody didn't expect that, you would be crazy. Now, of course, we expect better out of the offensive line, and we hope that they can be better. And by the time we get to the regular season, after going against the best defensive line in football, maybe the regular season feels easier than practice. Just like how going from Georgia and Alabama going to the NFL, the practices in the NFL are less strenuous and things like that, less demanding. So hopefully that same logic applies to this offensive line. But either way, the fact that now that they're going against the backup defensive line with the starting O-line, and that should give Sam Howell a little bit more time to figure out what's going on to process things. It's allowing them to, actually absorb the offense a little bit better and to gain a better rhythm and to getting some type of chemistry with the guys rather than every play Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat in his face. And now what would have been a sack in a real game scenario, and you know it in your head, but they play through the whistle. And I mean, even though it would have been a sack in a real game scenario, they're not allowed to hit Sam Howell, so that they just kind of stop at him and let him know like this would have been a sack. And Sam Howell has to just to continue in a fake scenario of delivering the pass. And even if he completes the pass, how good can he feel about it when he knows in a real game that he wouldn't have even had a chance to get the pass off. So I feel like today going against the backup defense is even beneficial to the starting offense for reasons like that. But it was really interesting because he opened up with a pass to Dotson working against Quan Martin, and Quan Martin had pretty good coverage, but Jahan Dotson, boy, he was giving people the business today, especially Christian Holmes. Hoo-wee, boy, but he was putting everybody in a route running cyclone today, boy. It was bad. He was getting open no matter who was covering him today. And Terry McLaurin called it a couple of days ago. He was literally like, man, I can't wait to play in pads because it's easier for me to separate against DBs once everybody has pads and helmets on or something like that. And I don't exactly know why. I don't remember him diving into exactly why that's a thing, but he said it days ago. And then lo and behold, today, Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin are eating even more than they normally do once the pads came on. So that was really interesting as well. But that's why Jahan Dotson was just killing people. I mean, we expected him to kill people, but once the pads came on, he looked like potential breakout receiver, wide receiver 1B, 1A type of thing. Not a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1B at worst. And then on the next play, Gibson was able to break a run up the middle for a really good gain as well. So again, the fact that the defense has to be balanced now. We've just been purely running passing plays since going all the way back to like mandatory minicamp, voluntary OTAs. Now this is like the first day that the offense, it can be a run or pass, you don't know. So now the defense has to play honest. And then when they're playing against the pass, we run the ball, it's easy to get a gain. And then when they're expecting the run, we're able to pass the ball, and guys are a little bit more open and things like that. So now, I mean, the defense is dominant, and it's ahead of the offense by a mile right now. But at the very least today, the defense kind of had to adjust a little bit. Like, oh man, it's not an automatic pass every play. So we kind of have to play a little bit more balanced, a little bit more on our toes. We can't expect what's going to happen. So you got to make a play for real. You got to really know what's going on and not just kind of wait back. Like, oh, we know they're going to pass it. Let's just wait here and stop the pass. Now you got to honor both. So I like that. And then also the starting offense was able to get a touchdown to Logan Thomas against the backup defense at a certain point. Sam Howell had a pretty good start to the day. And then when it came to the 7-on-7s, Howell did have a part, and shouts out to my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It on Twitter, man. Great content on Twitter, YouTube. Make sure you follow my dog over there as well. But there were 2 reps in 7s where Howell stared down Terry McLaurin, and that was really bad. The first one, Terry McLaurin would have got eaten alive. Remember Taylor Heineke's hospital balls? Sam Howell threw one of those. And then the second one ended up being a pass breakup, but it should have been intercepted. Again, shouts out to my boy Jamal for that information. But then Jamal said that Howell bounced back after the second rep with a completion to Curtis Samuel. And getting Curtis Samuel news is interesting because we just haven't heard much about him. I've seen people in the comments asking about him. I'm like, I don't know. Nobody's talking about him. I guess he hasn't been bad, and he also hasn't been great. I don't know. I'm hoping Eric Bieniemy unlocks him. But hey, man, it's really weird. And then Jamal said in that play where he got the completion to Curtis Samuel that he showed some patience, didn't stare down Curtis Samuel, and let the play develop and all of that. So Sam Howell kind of got into a better groove as the day went on. And then he also finished his series with 3 straight completions. That's Jamal updating y'all on that as well. So, hey, man, Sam Howell, took him a while. It's kind of like he had to warm up. He had to heat up, get into a rhythm. And once he did, he was straight. He was balling out per usual. And then there was even a point in time where he was using his legs to escape out of the pocket, which was really cool. And then, man, the play of the day, that deep shot to Terry McLaurin. Great accuracy, great touch. Literally only where Terry McLaurin could get it. And even so, I mean, if he would have let up on it just a little bit more, Terry McLaurin wouldn't have had to make the catch of the day. If it was just a tiny bit more accurate, I love the throw. And again, I prefer for him to overthrow it than underthrow it any day of the week. I talked about that in a previous training camp breakdown. And it was still a really good throw. But if he would have let up on it just a little bit, it wouldn't have had to take making the best catch of training camp so far to make the catch. That's my only point, but still a great throw. I like the fact that he threw it. I liked where it was. I just didn't love where it was like a lot of other people did, but still, man, Terry McLaurin came down with that catch. It was absolutely ridiculous how he made that catch. If you want to know, here's the clip right here, as a matter of fact. And then even after that, he was making really good throws on the run. It was one play where, I mean, if St. Juice just didn't have the best coverage of all time on De'Ami Brown, it would have been a touchdown. Shouts out to Sam Howell for that throw. Shouts out to De'Ami Brown because he had Derek Forrest beat and everything. But Benjamin St. Juice just literally put on the clamps, like super clamps. And it was just nothing Sam Howell and De'Ami Brown could do on that play. But still, since we're talking about Sam Howell, I brought that play up because, I mean, he was literally on the run and without even stopping, just flicked it out his hand, and it was just a beautiful pass. And that's just the type of stuff that Sam Howell can do that most people in the world just can't. Like, a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL already can't do that type of stuff. So the ceiling and the flashes are obviously there for Sam Howell. We just got to work on all of the little things, all of the consistency, nuance, stuff like that, and turn him into a better pro. But boy, the talent is for sure there. You ain't got to worry about that. And then also, shouts out to Zach Selby. He said that the offense looked better today than it's looked in the past few practices. So this was arguably one of their best days. Again, forcing the defense to be balanced with a heavy dosage of run and pass, where the defense isn't just expecting pass every time. It can make it easier on the offense. Things are definitely running smoother when the defense doesn't know you're passing and literally just waiting for you to pass it every play. So yeah, I definitely feel like I could have told y'all that if we knew that we were running the ball in practice today, that the offense would look better. That's why we run the ball. That's why we don't only pass in football. Being balanced helps you win games. So of course the defense still looked like a top defense, but the offense definitely looked better today than pretty much the rest of training camp. And then even Jacoby Brissett had a pretty good day. today as well. I mean, second team offense going against the first team defense, and that's the first time he's gone against them all off season so far. So that was interesting. But when they got to the goal line drills and stuff like that, he had a pass touchdown to Alex Armand, the fullback that we're more than likely not going to keep on the 53-man roster. But again, we keep him on staff, we keep him on the roster so that we're prepared and we're practicing against a fullback all off season. So when we go against some of these rare teams that still have a fullback, we're like not in shock, like, oh man, we have a week to prepare for a fullback. No, we've been working on it all summer, so we're good. And then out of 4 plays, Jacoby Brissett threw 4 touchdowns for the offense. So, hey man, Jacoby Brissett looking like that true veteran. And then even Jake Fromm, he had a read option and ran it the full 60 yards to the house. Now I'm not exactly sure if like people like touched them and he just kept running just cuz or whatever, but that's interesting that Jake Fromm ran a read option and kept it, because I don't even remember him trying to do that at my Georgia Bulldogs. But moving on to the running backs, Antonio Gibson had a great day today. Remember a couple of days ago, he had a great pickup block against Chase Young, which is huge because Antonio Gibson becoming a better pass blocker is going to change this entire offense, because that's arguably his biggest weakness. And if he can fix that, he's going to be a very well-rounded running back because of that. Also, earlier in the day, when they were doing inside drills and things like that, Gibson fought through contact on a nice hit to Abdullah Anderson and fought forward for a few extra yards. So he was showing the strength in the run game. And then there were even times that Sam Howell was throwing him the ball in the passing game. He ended up getting a really big gain on 7-on-7. So, hey man, Antonio Gibson, the super well-rounded running back right now. But I was listening to the Logan Paulson and Craig Hoffman podcast, and they were saying that right now Brian Robinson actually looks like the better route runner than Antonio Gibson right now. So that's really interesting. That is really, really interesting, because Antonio Gibson was literally a receiver converted to running back entering the NFL. And the fact that Brian Robinson is being given the option to run choice routes where, like, based on what the defense is doing, you decide what route you run. That's the level of trust Eric Bieniemy and this offense has in Brian Robinson as a passing game threat right now, which is insane. But Antonio Gibson is nothing to be played with either. That's my whole point right there. And then moving on to the wide receivers, great day for Jahan Dotson. I mean, when they were doing the one-on-ones, he beat Benjamin St-Juste easily. That wasn't even fair. And then De'Ami Brown at another point beat Emmanuel Forbes in the one-on-ones as well. It was like a really good release, but Emmanuel Forbes showed some great makeup speed to catch up to De'Ami Brown. But De'Ami Brown had a great start to the drill and to the route that he was running, and then Emmanuel Forbes was able to catch up and force the incompletion. But good release by De'Ami Brown right there. If you can consistently have releases like those, you may be able to get down the field. If you're wondering what play I'm talking about, here's the clip right here, actually.
I know it's not here.
And then later on, De'Ami Brown had a really good catch against Benjamin St-Juste. And again, Benjamin St-Juste was having his moments where he was clamping everything down. But there were just times that guys like De'Ami Brown were able to get the best of him. De'Ami Brown is just having one of those camps. He's having a ridiculous camp right now, like arguably one of the best camps out of any player. If we're talking about stocks who have risen the most so far in the offseason, he has to be one of the top 5 at the very least, and arguably the number 1 stock that has risen. And then also Terry McLaurin versus Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller had great coverage, but Terry McLaurin just straight up beat him with physicality and made the catch anyway. I mean, these are the receivers that we have in this group. Our secondary is going to be ridiculously good, arguably one of the best position groups on this team, but we got to remember that these receivers are different. And speaking of different, again, like I already mentioned earlier, Terry McLaurin with the catch of training camp, that catch was ridiculous, so you already know he gets busy. Also, shouts out to Terry McLaurin for his interview with the Pivot podcast. If you haven't seen that yet, go watch it. I still haven't seen it yet either, but I've seen clips. I'm definitely going to sit down and watch that. It's like an hour or something minutes. I'm really just happy that national media people are really like taking their time to, pay attention to the Commanders, and Terry McLaurin's basically spearheading that movement. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah, man, that catch that Terry McLaurin had where he was basically parallel to the ground at one point, had to catch it with one hand. He's the best body catcher in NFL history. He has to be, because Terry McLaurin, you typically, when you see a body catcher at receiver, you're like, oh no, this guy's not going to be consistent. He's not going to be any good. I think Terry McLaurin may be the only body catcher out of all of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL right now. It's absolutely ridiculous, man. That catch was crazy. And before we move on, just a really interesting statistic. And when he was talking on the Pivot podcast, I mean, the fact that Terry McLaurin has played with 10 different QBs in 4 years, and he has now had a different starting week 1 quarterback of every season of his short NFL career so far. That is so sad, man. So I'm hoping Sam Howell can be that consistency to where we can start to get some greatness out of this guy, because the numbers should be there. The talent is there. The numbers just aren't there because of the QB position, and offensive coordinator could take a lot of blame for that as well. Now moving on, Kyrick McGowan had a really nice move on a DB and got oohs and ahs from the crowd. I mean, he put like the moves on somebody and made a really good play. And then again, like I already mentioned earlier, Jahan Dotson was giving everybody the business no matter who it was. I mean, he had a really good 3rd down conversion catch from Sam Howell that was big time. It was just really, really ugly for people, man. If you want to see it, here's the clip right here. And that's the play I was talking about in the intro, where he had Christian Holmes looking crazy. Hit him with an AI crossover looking type of thing. That was disgusting, man. Jahan Dotson, you got to stop doing that to your teammates because they have a family, and you can't be leaving roadkill on the field like that. You're going to catch a fine for that. And then Byron Pringle, one interesting thing, shouts out to my boy Jamal again, he pointed out the fact that Byron Pringle was running with the ones today, a considerable amount. Hey, man, I'm telling y'all, do not be surprised. Do not be surprised if Byron Pringle and Marcus Kemp take up those last 2 wide receiver spots. I keep warning y'all. Now, there's a lot of guys still competing, like Dax Milne, who was our starting punt returner last year and has been making plays on offense as well. We have a lot of interesting names. You have Mitchell Tinsley and Jalen Sample, all of these guys. My boy Bryson Tremaine from Stanford. I feel like he has a decent chance of making it because we don't have a lot of guys with height. Marcus Kemp has a lot of height, but I mean, he's purely a special teams guy. I don't expect him to contribute on offense at all. We're bringing him in, and his name should be on the depth chart under special teams. Now, don't even put him under receiver. So Bryson Tremaine is like literally our best bet, other than the tight end group, of having a true wide receiver that's like a 6'5" tall jump ball target. And speaking of Bryson Tremaine, he had a great day today, man. He had a couple of really ridiculous contested catches that arguably only him out of the entire receiving group can make, because I mean, being like 6'5", you could put it somewhere where only he can get it, that even like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, as great as they are, can't get it. As great as any of our DBs are, they're not 6'5". Nobody has the reach and the arm length that he has. So hey, man, Bryson Tremaine, shouts out to you for having a great day today. Y'all know, if you've been watching my training camp breakdowns, I keep mentioning the name Bryson Tremaine. I haven't had any NFL evidence. I'm just going purely off of what he looked like at Stanford and why I've been so hype about him. Even if you go back to my undrafted free agent breakdown video where I talked about every undrafted free agent that we signed, and I talked about him. I'm like, hey, man, he has a way to pave a way onto this roster just simply by having that simple niche of being the only receiver that we have taller than 6'1", and he's showing it. He's using that 6'5" and making plays in training camp. First day of pads, and his name pops up a lot today, and he went very much so noticed by Eric Bieniemy and all of the coaching staff. He made some plays today to make them, all right, let's take a second look at this guy. This guy may be somebody we may want to compete for a real roster spot on this 53-man roster, or at the very least make the practice squad type of thing. So he definitely did himself a lot of favors today by showing out with all of the fans there. First padded practice, so the coaches are hype and everything. This is a great time for Bryson Tremaine to show out. And again, I've been trying to tell y'all about him for a while now, for months, and even just going back to mandatory mini camps and things like that. So I keep talking about him, and I'm happy that he's finally making me look at least a little decent out here, a little like a genius. And then also moving on to the tight ends, Sam Howell did have one really bad series in 11-on-11s. Like snap 1 was a fumble, snap 2 was a sack, snap 3 was an incomplete deep ball, snap 4 was a completed pass to Logan Thomas, and then snap 5 was incomplete to Terry McLaurin. So out of all of those plays, out of 5 plays in a row, the only completed pass was to Logan Thomas, which I'm bringing this up in the tight end section because that's just Logan Thomas for you. He's the safety blanket. A young quarterback's best friend is a dependable, reliable, consistent tight end target that's always open and catches everything you throw at him. A really healthy run game is always a young quarterback's best friend as well, a developing quarterback. But I'm telling you, that dependable, safe tight end, man, Logan Thomas is going to be huge for not only Sam Howell's development, but even throughout the regular season. He's going to be huge for Sam Howell gaining some confidence and getting into a rhythm so that he can finally start to take those deep shots to De'Ami Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson. Like, basically, Logan Thomas seems like he's going to be the catalyst for this offense. When in doubt, if Sam Howell's in an ugly like run. He's been like incomplete and accurate, overthinking things. Logan Thomas is the guy that would probably get him out of that funk type of thing. So again, that's why I'm bringing that up. But they were saying that a lot of those incompletions were like just really well covered. It wasn't Sam Howell's fault that he was being inaccurate. But when in doubt, I mean, Logan Thomas is like 6'6", who can really cover him. And then also Cole Turner had a really funny moment. Shouts out to my boy Jamal again. He said Cole Turner open on an over route, won pretty easily, but Brissett went for the deeper route, incomplete, and Turner was a little annoyed with that decision after the play, throwing his hands up like, come on, dog, like I just killed my guy. But then later on, Jacoby Brissett hit Cole Turner for a big gain off of a deep dig over the middle, and then he got right behind the linebacker to give Brissett a great window to hit him. So Cole Turner, just go out there and keep being consistent. The ball will come your way more often if they notice that you're consistently making plays. And again, shouts out my boy Jamal for that information as well. Now moving on to the O-line, basically the same theme with the offense in general, the offensive line specifically as well. Shouts out to Zach Selby for this. He said the main story today was whether the offense, specifically the offensive line, would improve with the pads on. It still wasn't perfect, but the unit did perform better than it did in all previous practices so far in training camp. The day started with the team running inside running drills and one-on-ones between the defensive backs and receivers. During inside drills, Cody Barton did have a really good tackle for loss against Brian Robinson, but when the drill continued, the offensive line started to get better. They started to gain some momentum and started to push the defensive line back a little bit more. So Chris Rodriguez was able to get a really good run. Like I mentioned earlier, Antonio Gibson had a big gain, and Jonathan Williams was even able to escape down the right sideline for a really good gain as well. So the offensive line, once they started getting going, started to get the jitters off and started to knock some of that rust off, they started to pave the way for some good running plays. So hey man, that first team offensive line was definitely getting some really good push out there. They were being very physical, like I've already explained in previous videos. The offensive line, you ask any offensive lineman, they prefer to run block than pass block. Now, pass blocking is what gets you paid, but if we're talking about in a game, which you prefer to do, attack the defensive lineman or be backpedaling and trying to hope that you can drop your anchor and all of this type of stuff to pass protect, I can almost promise you that every offensive lineman prefers the run block, and there's a reason for that. So, of course, they look better today now that we finally started to run the ball rather than passing the ball every single play in practice type of stuff. So, hey, man, the first team defense was still really good, but the O-line looked way better today than they've normally looked. So, again, Chris Rodriguez had a really nice 10-yard gain before anybody even touched him. Like, before any contact, 10 yards. Like, that's how good the offensive line blocked up some run plays today. But there was still some mistakes. Like, one time, Jonathan Allen had a crazy swim move over Sadiq Charles, and Eric Bieniemy was on his head about it, cussing him out and everything. And then also, one thing we do need to point out, notice Nick Gates has had some really bad issues with high snaps. Now, I know Daniel Jones is taller than Sam Howell, and you were the center for the Giants last year, but come on, dog. You got to be better than that. Because, I mean, like Tailgate Ted pointed out, shouts out to him. Make sure you follow him on Twitter as well. He said that that's probably like 5 high snaps already so far just in a few practices. But luckily, Sam Howell's been able to jump up like a basketball player going for a rebound and bring it down and basically turn a potential terrible play into nothing, basically. But, hey, man, we got to do better than that, Nick Gates. I'm not going to lie, bro. That's scary. We have to be better than that. And then also Samuel Cosmi had a really good rep against Deron Payne in the one-on-ones, like I mentioned earlier, where it was offensive lineman versus defensive lineman one-on-one. Same thing with receivers and DBs. Samuel Cosmi had a really good day. And it was his quickness that was able to allow him to win that rep against Deron Payne. And Deron Payne, we talked about this a few days ago. Deron Payne in his press conference said how Samuel Cosmi's ridiculous, rare, and elite athleticism makes it harder for him to do what he normally does. Deron Payne basically said, typically I have certain go-to moves that I can use against interior offensive linemen, and they pretty much work most of the time, if not almost all. But then you have guys like Samuel Cosmi to where I got to change it up type of thing. That's what he said. And then today in practice, Samuel Cosmi's elite athleticism, speed, and quickness and things like that showed. And hey, man, I'm telling you, he has that potential. He's got that potential. Also, when they were doing one-on-one pass protection drills, Chase Young and Jonathan Allen looked really good with wins over Charles Leno and Sadiq Charles. But then Nick Gates and Samuel Cosmi got their wins. Like I said, Samuel Cosmi had a good win against Deron Payne. And, I mean, he's just showing a really good ability to mirror Deron Payne, and like even when Deron Payne tries to make a double move, Samuel Cosme, that quickness, he just gets right back in front of him. Like, I mean, just looking like a computer generated Madden player type of thing, to where it's literally following Deron Payne's exact movements, like a mime almost. And then at one point though, Charles Leno was able to stalemate Chase Young, and that's impressive. I mean, he didn't have a perfect day, but that's very notable because Chase Young has been having a ridiculous camp, looking like he's probably even better than his defensive rookie of the year self. And for Charles Leno to at the very least go even with him is a win for us, man. I'm not gonna lie. And then one of the MVPs from practice today, Mason Brooks, had 2 ridiculous back-to-back reps against Fedarian Mathis, who also has been having a great camp. We're starting to see some pass rush potential from this guy. That's what separates Fedarian Mathis from John Ridgeway as well, is that he has some pass rush potential. John Ridgeway is a ridiculous run stopper, and I think Fedarian Mathis can also be a ridiculous run stopper, but he also provides some pass rush potential. That's why he's not only just a nose tackle like John Ridgeway, he's also a 3-tech defensive tackle if Jonathan Allen or Deron Payne need a rest, because he can still also rush the passer if you need him to. He's not only a run stopper, but at the same time, man, Mason Brooks embarrassed Fedarian Mathis today, boy. I mean, it's almost like an anime where I give you the backstory just for the character to die, man. Fedarian Mathis got baptized today, and of course Juan Castillo was extremely hyped. The whole offense was hyped, but Juan Castillo was arguably the most hyped person out there. It was one play where undrafted free agent guard Mason Brooks dominated Fedarian Mathis on one play, and Juan Castillo was jumping for joy immediately after that. But then the players called for a rematch, like, no, run that back. And then Mason Brooks put Fedarian Mathis on the ground. You know, I'm not trying to sound like I'm just this genius philosopher that can see the future, but I already broke down how Bryson Tremaine should have a pretty good camp. I'm not guaranteeing you that he'll make the team, but for reasons I've already stated in this video and several videos and live streams, why Bryson Tremaine should stick out compared to other undrafted free agents. And then I also already told you that Mason Brooks was a priority undrafted free agent, and that he's quite likely to make this team, especially if he can show that he can be a good positional flex type of guy. He could play any interior offensive lineman spots, especially both guard spots. But if he can also add some tackle to him, like when in doubt if there's injury, you can be comfortable with him playing a tackle for you as well, then he has a really good chance of making this roster. And so, hey man, it only helps when you have a day like this against Fedarian Mathis, the next second round undrafted free agent beating up and bullying and embarrassing a second round pick is crazy, especially a second round pick who so far has even looked better than being a second round pick. Fedarian Mathis, and I can admit, when we first drafted him in the second round, I was like, man, we probably could have gotten him later. But so far, since he's been on the Commanders, other than being hurt, he's looked like that he was good enough to probably even be a first round pick at times. But an undrafted free agent just embarrassed him, so I don't know about that anymore. I don't know if Mason Brooks is just that great or if Fedarian Mathis was just that bad. I really don't know. It's really hard to tell when it's your own offense going against your own defense. Like I already said, when the offense is making plays against the defense, you're looking at the defense with a side eye like, I don't know, man, looking a little sketchy. And then the same thing when the defense is balling out against the offense, you're looking at the offense, Eric Bieniemy, Sam Howell, what we doing? And so it's kind of like that with this Fedarian Mathis situation. I think Fedarian Mathis is one of them ones. I just think Mason Brooks may just be that good. I'm hoping that's the case. That's the best case scenario for us, for the Fedarian Mathis to still be a dog, but Mason Brooks is just that good. I really hope so. But again, you got to remember, Mason Brooks was a priority undrafted free agent, like I already said. We had to pay him more than you normally ever pay undrafted free agents because the Commanders were competing with other teams for his services. That's why you prefer to be an undrafted free agent rather than being a 6th or 7th round pick, because you can choose what team you go to, and you probably end up making even more money than some of the other guys. Because again, we had to like literally have a bidding war and present to Mason Brooks like, hey, you have a pretty decent chance of making the team type of stuff. We had to kind of sell him like a high school recruit going to college, like my boy Kirby Smart recruiting. We had to sell the Commanders to this man for him to pick us. So this is not a normal undrafted free agent, is basically what I'm saying, and it's definitely looking like that from the play on the field. All right, now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we have, starting with the defensive line, like I mentioned earlier, Jonathan Allen had that ridiculous move on Sadiq Charles. They got Sadiq Charles yelled at by Eric Bieniemy like a parent. And then of course we didn't mention Montez Sweat today, but Hey man, he wasn't playing when it was the second team offense versus the first team defense, the starters, and like he was getting double teamed and stuff like that. He was not playing. He was letting the sideline hear it. He literally said, honestly, this what y'all doing type of thing. Like he got chipped by the tight end, the running back. They were using all kind of people to help Andrew Wiley and those guys to stop Montez Sweat. And Montez Sweat was like, really? Like this what y'all on? Is that serious? Like, y'all need all of this to stop me type of thing. So I love that type of trash talk. Like, come on, dog. Let me get my one-on-one, man. Let this man die out here. Let him die. Let me cook him. Stop giving this man help, man. Let me go to work. And then also, I'm not sure if people notice, but that crazy catch that Terry McLaurin had, like the best catch of training camp so far, Chase Young had a really good rep on that play as well. Like he was right on Sam Howell's head. And I'm not even exactly sure if that would have been a sack or not in a real game if Chase Young was going full speed and actually trying to get to the quarterback. That play may have never even existed if this were a real game type of thing. So Chase Young was really good. He had back-to-back dominant rushes against Charles Leno when it came to the one-on-one drills. So don't think because we're not talking about Montez Sweat and Chase Young a lot that they're not balling out. I'm trying to bring y'all new information every day, and Chase Young and Montez Sweat have been so consistently dominant. It's like, what do we really talk about every day? I'm pretty sure y'all would get tired of hearing the same thing every day. I'm gonna occasionally update y'all on what they got going on, but just assume that they're balling now at this point. But today felt like a good day with pads and one-on-ones, like direct, like one-on-one, no help, like Montez Sweat was complaining about when they were doing team drills. When they were doing the one-on-ones, there's no help, and those guys showed out and showed why they are part of arguably the best defensive line in football this upcoming season. And then, hey, I don't want to look like too much of a genius, but I've been telling y'all that KJ Henry is that guy. I'm telling y'all he's already our third best edge rusher, only behind Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I think he's already better than James Smith-Williams, only getting better. He had a really good job setting the edge and making a stop on an inside run at one point. And I believe that was against the starting offense. And then another play made a great stop against the run. He had a tackle for loss, and I mean, he was having himself a great day. So he had some great plays against the run. And then going against Cornelius Lucas, he put a really good pass rush move on him and got right past him like it was nothing. I'm telling y'all, KJ Henry, I'm just trying to tell y'all. I've been telling y'all for days. I've been telling y'all for weeks. I've been telling y'all since we drafted him. Do not sleep. And I'm happy that when we finally got the pads on, because John Comm said it. Somebody asked him about KJ Henry like last week, and he was basically said like, well, I mean, he's looked decent in practice, but we won't really know until we get the pads on. Then as soon as we put on the pads, KJ Henry showing out like this against the run and against the pass, stop playing with him. And then Andre Jones even had a really good spin move against Braden Daniels, and that's crazy because Braden Daniels, if anything right now, his only asset to his game is his footwork, his elite footwork, foot quickness, and all of that type of stuff. And the fact that Andre Jones was able to get a spin move off on him is pretty impressive. And I'm not even a big Andre Jones fan, but hey, man, that's something to keep note of. That's noted right there. Now, moving on to the linebackers, Jamin Davis was at practice today. He didn't have court. We'll see what's going on with that situation, but for now, we're just going to kind of ignore it and hope for the best. I really hope he doesn't have to serve jail time, but there's definitely something to this because Jamin Davis has worked his way up to running with the ones since now he's back fully healthy. But today, he ran mostly with the twos. They had Cody Barton and David Mayo out there with the first team. Khaleke Hudson and Jamin Davis were running with the twos. I'm not exactly sure why they had Khaleke Hudson with the twos and David Mayo with the ones, but I feel like Jamin Davis was out there with the twos because of his whole situation. And if anything, it's just a punishment. Like, stop being stupid, run out there with the backups, because this is what you get. You need to earn your starting spot back after you being all dumb and stuff. And plus, we don't want you running with the ones and then you're suspended or whatever. You have to go to jail. You have to miss days, practice, maybe even games. And we don't want, like, we want to go ahead and give chemistry to those other. We want Cody Barton and these other linebackers to already have chemistry with the rest of the starting defense, because we may have to play without you type of thing. So I can see that right there. And then also, again, like I mentioned earlier, Cody Barton had a ridiculous play on a Brian Robinson tackle for loss in the run game. So he's getting more comfortable. I'm not worried about Cody Barton in coverage that much. It's the run game, and the fact that he's making plays against the run is huge. And then David Mayo even blew up some offensive linemen today, but that's kind of what you'd expect from David Mayo. One thing about David Mayo, he gonna stop the run. he gon' stop the run. The problem is that he's such a liability in coverage that it's just like you don't even want him on the field, even for 3rd and 1s, because what if it's a play action and then they throw the ball and David Mayo's it pretty much doesn't exist. You're basically playing 10 defensive players versus 11 offensive players, because when it comes to coverage, David Mayo might as well not even exist out there. So, but against the run, I'm not surprised that he had a great day today. I mean, blowing up offensive linemen like he was a D lineman type of stuff. Like, you can see the noticeable pop when he's engaging with them. That's what David Mayo is good. That's the reason he's in the NFL. That's the reason he's on the Commanders right now. And then moving on to the DBs. Again, that play that Dyami Brown had on Emmanuel Forbes that I showed y'all the clip for. Dyami Brown had a great release, but I like the fact that Emmanuel Forbes was able to catch up and get a hand in there and to still force a really difficult pass from Sam Howell and forced the incompletion because of that. If Emmanuel Forbes would have just gotten completely burnt there, that would have just been an easy catch for Dyami Brown from Sam Howell, but Emmanuel Forbes recovered and still made sure that play wasn't completed. And then also, again, one play where Dyami Brown was able to beat Derek Forrest and Sam Howell threw a really good ball, but Benjamin St-Juste completely clamped it up, so it was nothing to do there. And just overall, the DBs had a pretty decent day. I mean, other than, Christian Holmes getting literally dropped to the ground by Jahan Dotson, the DBs had a pretty good day today. Nothing really notable. The receivers were more exciting to talk about and watch, though. And then also, when it comes to the kick returns, so far it looks like the kick return competition, just based on the guys that were participating in kick return drills today, were Antonio Gibson, Dax Milne, Jahan Dotson, Danny Johnson, and Byron Pringle. And then when it comes to punt returns, the only people catching punts today were Jahan Dotson, Kazmir Allen, and Dax Milne, which is really, really interesting. Going back to the kick return situation, Byron Pringle fighting for a roster spot. Danny Johnson's always a part of the kick return thing. We don't expect him to start, but he's more than likely going to probably make the roster as a depth DB anyway, and it's like, emergency returner if you need it. Jahan Dotson's always interesting because you could argue he could be our best returner on roster. Between, I think, him, Antonio Gibson, and Curtis Samuel, they would be the best returners that we even have on this team, but you want to protect your first round pick from getting hurt, and something like punt returns and kick returns, it just may not be worth it. Dax Milne is interesting because he was our starting punt returner last year, but I don't want him on kick returns, so I don't exactly know what's going on there. Then, of course, Antonio Gibson was your starting kick returner at a certain point last season when he was healthy, and that's how it should always be. Antonio Gibson, out of that whole group, other than protecting Jahan Dotson, would easily be our best kick returner. And then also, punt returner wise, Jahan Dotson, Kazmir Allen, Dax Milne. Again, Jahan Dotson out of that group of 3 would be our best one. Kazmir Allen, I'm rooting for him because he has the explosion that Dax Milne doesn't have, but does he have the consistency to not muff punts like Dax Milne has? Again, Kazmir Allen, if you look at his testing, like the 40 time he ran and stuff like that, it's a little misleading. He was hurt going into that, so he looks way more explosive than what his tests show based on if you just look at his tape from UCLA. So he has that explosion. He had a really good kick return to UCLA, and that kick return, if you put Dax Milne in that play, I don't think that's a kick return for a touchdown. So the explosion is there. He's like our best chance of having a DeAndre Carter. Again, ignore Jahan Dotson. Maybe we'll use him in emergencies, but you don't want to put your best player back there if you don't have to. So right now, we need to hope that Kazmir Allen is consistent enough to be able to beat out Dax Milne for that starting punt return spot, because it's basically explosion versus consistency right now. And if Kazmir Allen can become more consistent, he will become the better player. But Ron Rivera, knowing as safe as he is, he would prefer to go with Dax Milne, who's safer if Kazmir Allen is out here looking like he's muffing punts and stuff like that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that button so you get a notification each and every time I release all of these training camp updates, all of this constant content I'm coming out. It's like 3-4 videos a day right now, so make sure y'all stay tuned. If you don't hit that bell next to the subscription button, you won't get a notification every time. You'll just get it occasionally, maybe today, and then the next notification you'll get will probably be like on Friday. It's crazy. So hit that bell. And also, man, let me know in the comment section. Again, I'm trying to read and reply to every comment, so let me know how you feel about everything I discussed today, whether you agree or disagree with any of my points, anything that I talked about from practice that you enjoyed the most, or anything that I didn't talk about that you felt like I should have dove further into. Let me know that as well. Everything, any thoughts and opinions you have on this video, definitely leave it in the comment section. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors' names you scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.